We left with Frigg trying to stop Loki from giving away all of the gods' secrets. But unfortunately, Frigg speaking up only had for effect that Loki turned towards her and started slandering her instead of her husband. "You're married to Odin, but you got cozy with his brothers," said Loki. Vili and Ve were Odin's brothers, that's true. This being said, Vili and Ve could be two of Odin's hypostases. A hypostasis is a form of personification. When ancient Egyptian gods manifest as animals, the animals they incarnate into is a hypostasis. In the same way, when Odin's memory and thought are portrayed as ravens, the two birds are hypostases. Vili and Ve could serve to personify two of Odin's characteristics. Maybe Odin's willpower and his sacredness are portrayed as characters walking alongside him. So basically Loki was accusing Frigg of sleeping with different versions of her husband, which does sound weird, but doesn't actually go against the rules of wedlock. Instead of coming up with a witty answer to Loki's accusations, Frigg just shook her head and moaned that if Balder were here, this wouldn't be happening. To which Loki happily admitted having killed Balder, thus proving how drunk he was. Freya said, "Someone should really tell Loki murdering people is illegal." "You've slept with everyone in this hall," said Loki. "Still not illegal," answered Freya. "You're the one who's not going to make it home tonight. And I'm not saying that because you're too drunk to drive. You even slept with your brother," said Loki. Frey and Freya were very close siblings, it has to be said. Very close. Njord decided to speak up for his daughter. "It's a small sin for a woman to have a lover," he said, "but a great sin for a man to turn into a woman." Now, I don't know where Njord got his ideas from, but there you go. Maybe his idea was that it was more natural for a woman to love, and more unnatural for a man to shapeshift. You have to think that in Norse culture, cross-dressing is frowned upon. "You're just a hostage that got cocky," said Loki, "and nobody respects you. Hymir's handmaids used your mouth as a chamber pot." This reference to Hymir is strange, because it seems to imply Njord was a hostage sent by Hymir. But although we know Njord was sent by the Vanir as a hostage, nowhere is there a myth where he was sent by Hymir or the Jotun. It might be a story we've lost, or the Skald here is having fun. "I don't care about your lies," said Njord, "because I'm blessed with a son who's become one of the greatest gods." "You're lucky he came out this good, what with all the inbreeding," said Loki. It is possible that Njord's first wife, before he was married to Skathi, was his own sister, which could explain the strong link between Frey and Freya, as incest wasn't such a big deal with the Vanir, in the same way it wasn't a big deal with the Greek gods. "Look, Frey is the best of us," said Tyr. He hadn't wanted to get involved, but like everyone else, Loki was getting on his nerves. "He doesn't mess around with maids or men's wives, which is more than can be said of you, and he frees bondsmen from their shackles." "Don't even try, Tyr. You're the god of war, not reconciliation," said Loki. Although it's a shame for a god of war not to have their fighting hand, I must say. Lost it like Little Red Riding Hood, didn't you? "I lost my hand, but you lost your son," said Tyr. "Fenrir won't be eating anyone until Ragnarök." "Talking about sons, you might want to do a paternity check on yours," said Loki, "but don't expect me to pay his pension." Although it's far from impossible Loki had dealings with Tyr's wife, it must be said she's never mentioned elsewhere, so it's not very clear who she is or even if she actually exists. True or not, this accusation did make Tyr go quiet. At this, Frey decided he might pipe up. He'd been waiting for his turn to speak since Loki had started trashing him. "Fenrir will be bound by the river until the end of time. And so will you, Loki, if you don't stop this right now," said Frey. Fenrir, bound to his rock, was drooling like most big dogs do. He was drooling at a river of spittle called the River Van, running from his jaws across the land. This is the river Frey is referencing here. "But the end of times will come," said Loki. "Fenrir will be set free. And you know who's going to look stupid without his sword when Ragnarök hits the fan? Shame you gave it away, isn't it?" As we've mentioned before, Frey gave away his sword to gain the hand of his wife. It is true that at Ragnarök he will be left fighting with a stag's antler, which may be one of the reasons why he loses his fight against Surtr. Now it so happened that Frey's servants, Vigvir and Boiler, were also present. Like all good servant with a short life expectancy, Vigvir spoke up to defend his master, saying that if he was one of the blessed gods, he would break Loki's neck, and that only his status as a servant prevented him from murdering Loki. To which Loki answered he couldn't even hear Vigvir, he was so lowly. He'd have to speak up if he wanted the High Ones to notice him. Loki and Bigvir went on like this for a while, Loki going so far as to say that Bigvir was so tiny he couldn't find him in the straw strewn across the hall. This could have gone on for a long time, had Heimdallr not interrupted. Okay guys, Loki is drunk, just ignore him. You live such a sad life, Heimdallr. Loki was on fire that evening. I want to hate you but I can't. A stiff back and a wet bum for all eternity, sitting in the grass guarding the Bifrost. Ragnarök will come as a relief. Heimdallr's bane sat proudly back, having hushed his enemy, and it was Loki's bane's turn to speak. "We'll tie you to a rock with your son's cold guts," said Skarfi. As she was the only other Jotun in the hall, maybe she thought she would be able to calm down Loki, or at least frighten him. "If you'll tie me to a rock with my son's cold guts, know that I was the first person in the fray when they killed your father Thjatsi. If you were the first in the fray when they killed my father Thjatsi, know that you'll be cursed, and I will be avenged." Loki only laughed. "You were nicer to me when you wanted us to share one bed. After all, if this evening is the evening of truth, you might as well admit you fancied me." Skarfi was burning with shame and fury. Sif walked forward and gave Loki more to drink, which, given the circumstances, probably wasn't the best idea she'd ever had. She asked him to drink and prevent from saying another bad word, especially about her, as she was blameless. Loki did drink, but he didn't roll under the table like Sif must have hoped. "You would be blameless," he admitted to Sif, "but for one fault. Such a shame I know the sly Loki was the one to catcall the great god Thor." Now when Thor's name is spoken out loud, he often comes forward. That's how the gods can summon Thor back to Asgard in case of trouble. That's why humans pray to him. Thor is always paying attention. And now that Loki had spoken his name, he was on his way back from Jotunheimr, riding to Aegir's hall. Boiler started whispering excitedly that she could hear him riding thunder and crashing through the sky. Loki's insults to Boiler were lost in the thunderclap of Thor's appearance. "Shut your mouth, or Mjolnir will shut it for you," said Thor. He wasn't sure what was going on, but killing people with Mjolnir was usually the solution. "I'll shatter your skull." "You say that now, but you'll be slow to use your hammer at Ragnarök," said Loki. "Fenrir will have time to eat Odin before you gather enough courage to fight him." What I find really interesting in this myth is how slander works for the past and for the future. You're told off about bad things you've done, and about bad things you're fated to do but haven't had a chance to do yet. "Shut your mouth, or Mjolnir will shut it for you," said Thor again. "I'll throw you back to Jotunheimr where you belong." He wasn't a great one for witty answers, and anyway, he'd had his full of witty answers against Horbath, and look what good that had done. Threatening to hit stuff was a better bet. "You're not as great a Jotun killer as you'd like to be," sneered Loki. "You cowered in Skymir's glove, afraid of the sound of snoring." As we've seen in Skymir's myth, I won't delve into more detail here. If you'd like to know more about it, you can watch Thor's Unlucky Travels. "Shut your mouth, or Mjolnir will shut it for you," said Thor. "I'll break every bone in your body." "And you couldn't undo Skymir's rope, you were so weak," said Loki. "As I recall, we all went without supper that day because you were too feeble to get us food." "Shut your mouth, or Mjolnir will shut it for you," said Thor. "You'll pass the gates of Nagrind on your way to hell." Thor was grinding his teeth, losing patience, and he lifted his hammer above his head, ready to strike. "You know what? You're the only person who might actually hit me," said Loki. "For you, but for you only, I'll leave." But as he left, Loki's parting words were a curse on Aegir and his hall, wishing them to burn to the ground. We don't know if his curse was completed at Ragnarök, but if so, this leaves Loki the winner of this long battle of wit. Hi everyone, I hope you enjoyed the end of the Lokasenna. Next week I'll try to finish the God of War myth-busting episode, so you can see for yourself when they followed closely to the myths and when they took some liberties with the original stories. As always, if you enjoyed this, it'd be great if you liked the video or subscribed. Cheers!